dungeon master has placed you in a dreadfully precarious position.
Great Finds Resale. It's time to go into your basement and maybe your dungeon and dig up some of those old games that you may have hidden down there because you weren't allowed to play them because of the controversy. Now, Dungeons and Dragons has been around for 30 years, but this particular game did cause a big panic. A student at Michigan State University, even though he had different issues, he went missing, and Dungeons and Dragons was blamed for that.
There was speculation he was the victim of a campus game called Dungeons and Dragons.
Along with some suicides, a parent actually sued a school district because her son had committed suicide because of a curse on a character, and he played the game with the principal. Now, that, as odd as that may seem, you know, people look for different reasons to do different things, but that controversy started. It never actually got banned. The only place it really ever got banned was in a Wisconsin prison. There was an anonymous letter written by one of the inmates who indicated that the players that were playing Dungeons and Dragons were forming a gang. So apparently it also leads to gang initiations and different criminal activities, although it looks like just a book here. And now looking back, it looks a little less harmless. But this is Dungeons and Dragons. I, of course, was not allowed to play with this because my parents love me, and that's, of course, is a joke. This just wasn't something that I was into, but this is core rulebook number 1, and I have figured out probably I wouldn't have been into it because look how thick this book is. This book looks thicker, and this is just core rulebook number 1 than any book I was probably assigned in school. Now, I do have to give it to these people because this is very detailed. There's the contents. There is a master who runs it. This is a game it's a social game. There is no online or screen time, things that we worry about today. This was a board game that you would play with your friends. There is some interesting and strange things that go on, but it's almost kind of like a Lord of the Rings. It's really the first role-playing game out there. And even though it was banned in a Wisconsin prison, it is still around today because controversy will increase sales on most things.
Our stock took off, literally. We sold thousands of more copies within 90 days of all that stuff happening.
Tell kids they can't have it, they'll want to know why, and they will investigate, and they probably will play. See, this looks happy. So this particular book, it's an older book, it's a hardcover, looks cool, it's a player's handbook. Now this book sells, if you can get around $10 for it, I think you're doing pretty good. You might be able to get more if you wait for it, but things do add up. You have a whole stack of these particular books. One of them may be worth more than the other. They're just kind of interesting. They're almost historical pieces, not to make you feel old. But these are the original Dungeons and Dragons. Of course, we have advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and there's some different things that you can do as well. This is just a whole book on monsters. It says monsters, monsters, and more monsters. So you know exactly what you're getting in this particular book. This does have the spine broke. That doesn't mean you can't still sell this, and it might still bring you some money. But look at the contents. This is pretty impressive how many monsters there are, and it's basically just a book of monsters. Different things, the hit dice, different things you can do. I think you almost need a master's degree to figure out this game. It looks, I've never played it, but it looks pretty interesting, and it looks pretty intense. There we go here. But this is like one of the pre-internet controversies. Dungeons and Dragons. This book, without the broken spine, sells for just a little bit more. And then you also have source books. Now this source book, this one's actually, you can get a lot more. You can get about 3 times as much as you can for the first book. But if you sell these all as a set, maybe you can work something out there if someone's collecting some older ones. Hollow World, it's a Dungeons Master source book. Don't know what that means, but you have different things that you can go through. I mean, this is a lot of reading. This is a lot of reading. See there. special things. People did put their names on it, so they weren't that afraid. The history, the origins. I mean, there's a lot of actually time and effort that went into these. There's another player's guide, and this has maps. So there's different maps that you can actually pretty intricate maps. The different worlds, the Hollow World maps. You can sell the maps separately. There's all kinds of maps. This is the outer world, and of course you have the inner world and the hollow world. There's all kinds of things. I don't know exactly what all these are. Book 2, it's a player's guide. So they just kept coming out with more and more stuff. Millennium Empire. Like a Roman guy. More maps. Some sort of turtle. Now, I get it with this one. I mean, parents see this. That doesn't look very family friendly. TSR, that's originally came out with. They have since sold it. This is a Dungeons and Dragons rule book. I mean, this is just a rule book. I mean, we don't even read the rules on most games we play. But this is just the rule book. And they do have a cleric, so there's some... I guess that's the cleric. Other character statistics. There's a spell list. Anytime you mention spells, you're going to cause a little bit of controversy. Monsters. Just all the different Wandering Monsters table. It's like a recipe. It's cool. These you want to look up individually. This is one I actually had a hard time finding. This is a cool book. The Paladin in Hell. Okay, I get it. Although there's a knight. I don't know if he's a Templar, but he's a knight, and he's obviously fighting... That might be Satan himself. There is a reason that people jump to certain conclusions. I get it.
Dungeons & Dragons has been called the most effective introduction to the occult in the history of man.
But they have spies. Well, it's not looking good, Dungeons & Dragons. Descent into Hell. A recent history of hell. The history of hell could fill all the libraries that have ever existed. Well, probably true. Well, you get the frozen pit, different things. Watchers. I didn't realize they had a viewing gallery. It's just different. Oh, here's a map. The Temple of Narrated in Hell. Different places, apparently. There's a cage, a prisoner wall. I don't see a cafeteria. But anyway, hey, they even have cartoons. Be a part of the biggest role-playing adventure in the world. But you can join a little game there. RPGA. So they do have organizations. But they do have a lot of... This is the Forgotten Realm. Now, this is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. It came out after Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeon Crawl from 6 to 8 characters. Hellgate Keep. Yeah, that doesn't look fun. I don't know which character you're playing, but it has some cool things that you can look at. Some of these, the deep tunnels, and then of course a cross section. Well, this is circa 1370. I don't know if this is to scale. It's a water table. Well, looks like a fun place to visit. There's epilogue. And then they even had some British ones. UK 4 Adventures module. Official game When a Star Falls. That's Graham. That's the UK spelling of Graham. This one sells for a little bit more, just because it's basically just some maps, the Star Falls, adventure models. They're just interesting sets. Anything that has any sort of controversy or any sort of, especially if they're banning it, I don't know if they're banning in prison, or rumors. I mean, this is before the internet rumors when they tried to ban these. This wasn't something you saw online. This is something that you played with a group of kids. They also had dice. I got these dice with it, but I don't know if these are the actual dice for Dungeons & Dragons. I know they had a 6-sided dice. And you know what 6-sided dice? They probably had 3 of them. 666. See? Dungeons & Dragons. There's a reason Mom and Dad didn't like you. But anyway, go in your basement. All these together, you could probably get a pretty good sum. Just if you did $5-10 a piece. Some of these are in better shape, some of them are not. Take the time to do the research. take the time to go in your basement. Your mom and dad will thank you for clearing out stuff. And you probably don't join a cult after. We don't need more controversy about Dungeons and Dragons.